All right, everybody, this is Sheets. I'm doing this solo today, and I apologize for the glare. Um, so I'm going to go over today's MLB slate, and fortunately or unfortunately, the way I like to do it is just a little different than when I do it with Bobby. I just want to kind of just show you how I kind of do this using my sheets and not necessarily going game by game. I really do prefer the slate overview way of doing it rather than just go game by game by game. Because what happens is when you go game by game by game, I mean, in my opinion, by the time you get to game 10, you forgot really the emphasis of game one. So I like to just kind of put everything together and just kind of see what the slate looks like. So I'm looking right now at my projection sheets, which are somewhat early, but they kind of give a sense of what's going to happen today. You have a slate that is just loaded with good pitching options. I mean, you'll see even just by name recognition that these guys are really, really strong. And when you do rate these guys by my value score, you do see kind of a decent bunching up at the top. You see Peralta as kind of having a slight edge, but right under him, you have some very, very strong values in Wheeler, Musgrove, Giolito. I mean, what do you say about a slate where you have, for me, I have Cole rated fourth or fifth. So it's loaded. And on the one hand, you really can't go wrong with any of these guys. On the other hand, you want to make some good decisions based on ownership. And yes, right now, these ownership numbers are somewhat early, but hopefully I will update these for premium members on my sheets, hopefully one more time before the slate locks a little bit later. So the way I look at this is I say, okay, this is a slate where I am going to get multiple exposure to these pitchers and, well, exposure to multiple pitchers. And I probably want to highlight these ones that are slightly lower owned. I mean, Peralta does rate to be somewhat the best, but not by a lot. And when you're double the ownership of, say, Wheeler, Musgrove, Giolito, and Cole, you probably want to go down to some of these other guys. And I will say that Cole, despite him putting up some really good performances, has been really, really under-owned recently. And if you go back, and he was 10%, a couple of starts back, 6% on a weekend, a couple of starts before that. So I don't know what it is, but they haven't given him a lot of respect. So I would definitely, consider this a slate one where you're going to need, if not one, maybe two of these guys. And then when you look down on the list, I mean, you really don't see that much with respect to cheaper options that are even close. I mean, the first thing you'll get to is Kikuchi at 7,800, who is, his score is just so low. And likewise, Bubich at 5K, his score is just so low that I don't think that it's probably going to be the way to play. I think that you're probably going to want to double pay for these pitchers and try to make it work hitting wise. And that's been kind of different than what it has been. In the last couple of weeks, the hitting has really gone off and the pitching has been just kind of just struggling to survive. But I think on this slate, you're going to see a departure from that just because these guys all just have such great ceilings that you're going to want to participate in those. So that's my first thing. So again, I would say Peralta, Wheeler, Musgrove, Giolito, Cole, Montas. I mean, they all rank very similarly, so I would use them all. And I would highlight the ones with lower ownership, Wheeler, Musgrove, Giolito, Cole, Montas, maybe a little more than Peralta. And again, these are guys I'm probably not going to get to. Male, Bubich, Kikuchi, guys like that. Next thing, before I go into actually DraftKings stacks and positions, I struggle with how I want to do this from an organizational perspective. So let's go to FanDuel first. Let's go to the FanDuel pitching and just see how it kind of compares. And you'll see it's very similar, with the exception of the fact that the ownership is much heavier. It's stacked more on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings. So FanDuel, likewise, you see Peralta being, kind of a top option, but not by a lot. And if this is accurate, where Musgrove, you're only going to get 5% ownership, that's going to be a huge, huge standout. Odorizzi, Male, they all rate very similarly, but they have almost no ownership. So for me, if you're going to pay up. You could play Peralta, but I would have no problem playing these other guys like Musgrove or Rizzi and Malley, because they rate similarly and just their ownership is going to be so much lower. And or you might even try Montas. Why play Giolito, for example, when you could play a very equally valued Montas at much lower ownership? That's the way I'm going to kind of approach FanDuel as well. Cole, I'm probably not going to get to over here on FanDuel. He just rates just significantly lower than these guys. So that's the FanDuel pitching slate as far as I'm concerned. Now we're then going to go back and look at stacks, both on DraftKings and on FanDuel, and then we'll go to positions. Maybe I'll run a test build to kind of see what it looks like. So with respect to DraftKings stacks, people have asked me about this, is how do you want to rank these? I mean, you can either rank them by my raw stack rankings, or by my value stack rankings, or by my modified stack rankings. And what I've discussed in the past is how you rank your stacks is in some sense dictated by where you think you're going to go pitching wise. So as I mentioned just before, if we've decided that we're going to be paying up at least some degree for pitching, I mean, ranking these guys by raw points is really just not going to help us, because you're probably just not going to be able to afford them anyway. So I want to rank these guys by modified stacks and value stacks with respect to how to analyze these guys. So let's first look at let's look at value stack first. So value stack, if you rank them by here, the top options are going to be the Yankees, the Rangers, and the Red Sox. But you'll see it's pretty close, but I do think the Yankees and the Rangers for pure value kind of stand out. And when you look at the guys that they're recommending here, I mean, this is certainly not, no great all-stars. I mean, this is where the cheap guys come from, which is why usually you don't want to just naturally rely on value stack rankings. You want to probably go to modified to get an idea of where you want to go. So you'll see that two stacks stand out when you rate them by modified. That would be Washington and the Yankees again, but here you get to use Stanton, which is always good. So in this one, you get to use Stanton and Torres, so you do get that upside as well, along with just this pure value. So I rank these guys in this way: Washington and the Yankees as kind of the top ones, and then underneath you'll see the Angels. I have kind of in a sort of a secondary tier of their own over here. But you'll see also that all these guys have carry some degree of ownership. The one that really stands out for me, if you factor in both value and ownership, is down in this range where you play guys like Baltimore. Now again, it's a little scary to play Baltimore, but again, you're getting that floor in your lineups when you're pitching, and you're getting these guys cheap and at low ownership, which is a good combination. And then you have Cincinnati, very, very strong play here with Aquino, India, Suarez, Winker, Farmer. And then, if you have it in you, you can go back to Detroit. But Detroit, you'll see, is probably garnering some ownership. So I would probably go back to our Texas, and then there's San Francisco. They're probably a good play too. So you get away with paying for those pitchers because the salaries do open up some good values with good upside and some degree low ownership in some of these stacks. Like if you rank these guys, just example, by raw, you're going to get San Diego, which you're probably not going to be able to afford. You're going to get Houston. Okay. So, but that's okay. I mean, I'm perfectly content making Washington kind of my top stack to attack here. And we're going to see what happens when I run test builds to see what we come up with. But that's the way I'm kind of looking on DraftKings. Now, with respect to FanDuel, as I've mentioned before, you can get away with the raw stack rankings over here a little better because of the way the pricing works on FanDuel, you can afford them just a little easier than you could on DraftKings. So fortunately, when you rank them by raw points, you're still going to get the Washington. So Washington and the Angels rate to be the top stacks over there. And then you see kind of a little, little drop, but not much, to San Diego, Cincinnati, Dodgers, the Angels, Houston. If you do rank on FanDuel by modified, you'll see Cincinnati kind of stand out though. So that would be probably what I would consider doing in my hand builds. I would play Cincinnati and then pair them with the Angels. Oh, look at Kansas City. Kansas City at very reduced ownership is probably a good play. Minnesota, kind of reduced ownership, very strong play. Then even again, San Francisco, very strong play. So Washington here, when you rank them by modified, they're not that great and they're high owned. So on FanDuel, I think Cincinnati would be the top. And then I would be after stuff like Kansas City or Minnesota or San Francisco, things like that. All right, let's go back to the individual positions and let's just take a look and see who stands out as significant one-offs on both DraftKings and FanDuel, and then we'll go ahead and make some test builds. You'll see right off the bat, you'll see Justin Upton on the outfield, DraftKings, very strong play. Aquino, the outfield, very strong play. Duran and Hayes, if you want to pay down. Para. First base, you got Wade, Cabrera. Not the greatest one-off values today, if you want to know the truth. But if you want, you could sort these by positions if you have access to my sheets and come up with that. But that's just kind of some one-offs that I came up with. Grisham, Dickerson, Josh Bell. If you want to pay up, Soto looks pretty good. And then with respect to FanDuel, the one-offs over there. Aquino again, which makes sense because Cincinnati rates to be a strong play. Upton, which makes sense because the Angels rate to be a strong play. Larnach, which makes sense. And Minnesota rates to be a strong play. And you'll see that a decent amount on FanDuel is that your one-offs are also the ones that fit the stacks really, really well. So you want to have some fun. You want to make a test build. All right, let me pause for a second. And then I'll pull up SaberSim and we'll do it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into SaberSim here. We're going to do some test builds, and we're not going to use their projections. We're going to use my custom projections, and this is the way. I mean, I just kind of developed my own way of doing it. We're going to try to work on a way to upload these directly from the site to SaberSim if that's what you want to do. But I mean, I have my own files here. That allow me to upload it directly. So let's so what we do is we go into upload data, upload CSV, and then if you saved your own, then obviously you could do that. But here I kind of saved it in the format they need, and then I just upload it there. Set all other projections to 0. And it doesn't take that long for them to get the upload. It lets you know if they have a guy that they think is out that's in my projections. We're going to ignore that for now. And you'll see it replaced their projections with mine, their ownerships with mine, and all that. So then we'll do a build, and what we're going to do is we'll build 20 lineups. All right. So what you can do is a couple of things. You can use their default sliders, and I refer you to SaberSim to describe what these things mean. But this is a kind of a sample 20 max build that they already put together. But let's tweak this a little bit. Let's make the correlation a little less high. We'll make the smart diversity a little less strong, which means a little less random. And we'll move up ownership fade just a little bit. We want to build 20 lineups. It's a good idea. Let's build 150 actually, because this way it'll give a sense. Let's do a full 150 max build with full correlation, full everything. It'll give us an idea of what we're likely to come up with if we use my projections and we run it this way. And this is a good thing to do either early in the day or obviously when you want to actually build your lineups. to kind of see where my projections are leading you with respect to actual builds. Now, again, SaberSim is really good because it builds for correlation, it builds for upside. It doesn't just slap on a median projection and give you lineups like that. Again, we're working on automating this with we're working on automating it with TrueDFS, where we could just upload it directly from the site, if that's what you guys want to do. But at the very least, what we're going to do, and at the very least, at the least, what we're going to do is maybe do a CSV download of my projections, so that if you want, you can then upload them to SaberSim there with minimal aggravation. Now, at the very, very least, you could just download my projections into a spreadsheet and upload them to SaberSim. But let's see what we come up with here. All right. So here, we saw what we got. So pitching wise, it would give us about 55% Peralta. And it would give us significantly over the field on these guys, like 36% Musgrove, 36% Wheeler, 36% Cole, etc. And if we look for the team stacks, it actually does come up with a good amount of Washington, like 2/3 of Washington. And then, the Yankees would be the next. But it does give you a decent amount of everybody. And it gives you different stack types. So you could screw around with this. You could put less 4-3s, more 5-2s, whatever it was. And if you want, you can just download these and upload them directly to DraftKings if you want. But I think this is a good tool to use. As long as we're here, I may as well do one for FanDuel as well. So again, you can do this with any optimizer, really, but I like using the SaberSim one. So what we do is, again, we upload the custom projections, and again, I have my own macro that builds this for me. Upload these here. Again, they have Castellanos out. We'll worry about that later. And we'll build, again, we'll build 150 again. And let's just see what we come up with FanDuel was. Now, what you will find, by the way, if you use SaberSim, is that if you build 150 max FanDuel lineups, you are going to get, just the way I found is a decent amount of money left on the table. And it'll make you feel really uncomfortable. But the reason why that happens is because you have your slider set for significant correlation. It's going to favor that fourth Dodger, for example, or that fourth Tiger, as opposed to a better projected one-off, right? So that's why you're going to get lineups with significant money left on the table. And that's just going to be up to you to determine how much it's important to you to have that correlation. I do feel as though somewhere in the middle is the reality. But that's what you're going to get. So if you on FanDuel, when you do a build with my stuff, you're going to end up with maybe 40% Musgrove, which makes sense. And then Peralta, Wheeler, Giolito. When it comes to stacks on FanDuel, San Diego, you're going to be able to get to San Diego a decent amount, which is what I said. You can afford things on San Diego. On FanDuel a little bit more. And you'll see 4-3, 4-2. Not that many 4-4s though, which is interesting. Okay, so I guess that's pretty much it, right? We went through the rankings of who I like pitching wise. Went through the rankings of individual players on both sides, stacks both sides. We did a test build, and I think this gives you a good slate preview, which obviously you're going to have to tweak a little bit later, especially when ownerships get changed and things like that. But that's kind of a look into my process. And what I would do next is probably build some dummy lineups and upload them on DraftKings. And just so I make sure I'm registered for the tournaments and all that stuff, so that I can always tweak them later. And that's probably what I am going to do once I disconnect you guys. That's about it. Good luck today.